the nurse everyone mocked, turned out to be the CEO's mother. Mama Grace had been a nurse longer than most of the younger staff had been alive. Her real name was Grace Olumide, but no one remembered that anymore. In the hospital corridors, where the walls smelled faintly of disinfectant and thyme, she was simply Mama Grace, a quiet, elderly black woman with gentle hands and tired, watchful eyes. Her skin was the color of warm earth, lined with years of work, patience, and sorrow. Her frame had shrunk with age, her back slightly bent, but her spirit remained upright. She moved slowly but steadily, like a hymn hummed under the breath, unseen, unnoticed, except by the old patients who smiled when she tucked their blankets tighter or gently wiped the corners of their mouths with motherly care. To them, her presence was a comfort, like the whisper of a prayer they could not speak for themselves. But to most of the young nurses, Mama Grace was little more than a shadow. They giggled when she walked past, their crisp uniforms rustling as they whispered behind her back. "She's still working? What's she looking for here at her age? She should have retired 10 years ago. Why is she hanging around like some old ghost? Maybe she's just lonely. Poor old thing, no husband, no kids to go home to. Or maybe she likes the attention, acting like she's still needed." And they would laugh, quickly, nervously, as if mocking her made them feel younger, stronger, more important. Mama Grace heard. Of course she heard. Her hearing was sharp, even if her eyes needed glasses now. But she never said a word. Never flinched. She simply tucked the corners of her mouth into a small smile, not bitter, not angry. Just sad. A quiet kind of sadness that she carried alone. She tried, sometimes, to help them. When she saw them struggling with a restless patient, or fumbling with a stubborn fall line, she would step forward gently. "Let me help, dear," she would offer softly, her voice like worn silk. But they would wave her off, sometimes with annoyance, sometimes with impatience. "We've got this, Mama Grace," they'd say. "You can rest. Just sit. You've done enough for today." And she would nod and step back, folding her hands in front of her, watching with quiet eyes as they stumbled and corrected themselves, pretending they didn't need her. Once, she reached for a medicine tray left carelessly on the edge of a cart, ready to fall. She caught it gently, saving the glass vials from shattering on the floor. A young nurse gasped and rushed over, grabbing the tray from her hands. "Careful, Mama Grace," the girl scolded. "You don't have to touch these things anymore, you know. You're not as fast as you used to be." "I know, dear," Mama Grace murmured. "I was just trying to help." The girl was already walking away, muttering, "Old people, always trying to prove something." But Mama Grace said nothing. She simply turned and made her slow way down the hallway. Her soft shoes made no sound. Like a shadow passing. The supervisors noticed her less and less. When new nurses were hired, no one mentioned her name in orientation. She was not called for major procedures anymore. She was not trusted with new technology, new medicines. She was a quiet figure in the background, folding sheets, adjusting pillows, soothing frightened patients who still saw her and smiled. The old man in Ward 3 called her Angel every time she checked on him. "Angel," he whispered hoarsely, touching her hand with trembling fingers. "Don't let them forget about me, eh?" "I won't forget you, Mr. Benson," she promised softly, brushing his hair back from his wrinkled forehead. "You are not forgotten." But no one noticed these small acts. The others hurried past, screens glowing in their hands, reports waiting to be filed, charts to update. Only the janitors, the quiet men and women who mopped the floors late at night, greeted her with respect. "Mama Grace," they'd nod. "Still strong, Mama?" "Still breathing, child," she'd reply, smiling. Sometimes, the young interns would pause when she walked by, sensing something they couldn't name. They would watch her slow, careful steps and feel a strange warmth in their chest. Something about her reminded them of their own grandmothers, of quiet hands holding theirs in childhood, of stories told by lamplight. But they never spoke it aloud. There were days when Mama Grace sat in the small break room, holding her tea in her worn hands, listening to the laughter of the younger nurses. "She's so old-fashioned," one whispered. "She probably doesn't even know how to use the new monitors," another laughed. "She just likes feeling useful. Poor old woman. Can't let go." They never said it to her face. But they didn't need to. Their eyes spoke when she entered a room, impatient, dismissive, hurried. Like she was in the way. But Mama Grace never showed anger. She bore their scorn with the same patience she gave to the sick and the dying. She knew these girls, young, full of pride, ambition, beauty, would learn. Life would teach them, the way it had taught her. Because once, she too had been young. Once, she too had been the fresh, bright nurse with quick fingers and a sharp mind. She had run these halls with certainty. She had cared for babies born too soon, held the hands of the dying, stitched the wounded with steady skill. She had stayed late when the wars broke out. She had comforted the broken-hearted, calmed the mad. She had seen death in this hospital. She had seen life. And she had never stopped loving it. But no one cared about that now. One afternoon, Mama Grace watched from a distance as a patient cried out in pain. The young nurse attending him panicked, looking helplessly at the blinking machines. Mama Grace stepped forward. "Let me see, child," she said gently. But the nurse snapped, "No, Mama, I've got this. You just go sit down, please. You shouldn't be stressing yourself." So Mama Grace stood back. And she watched as the girl struggled to calm the patient, fumbling with his oxygen mask, whispering frantic apologies. Eventually another nurse came to help. Mama Grace sighed softly and turned away. No one knew that Mama Grace had once saved that same patient's life, years before, when he was a soldier returned from war, bleeding from a bullet wound. But the hospital had forgotten. Memories faded like worn paper. Sometimes, at night, when the halls were quiet and the machines beeped in sleepy rhythm, Mama Grace sat in the corner of the ward and whispered old prayers under her breath. Not for herself. For the patients. For the nurses. For the world that hurried too fast and forgot too much. And when she walked home under the pale moon, her steps slow but steady, she carried no bitterness. Only quiet sadness. And quiet hope. For somewhere in her heart, she knew, truth does not die. Kindness does not vanish. And every small good deed, every cup of water, every wiped tear, every held hand, was written in a book that no one else could see. A book that would someday be opened. But not yet. Not yet. The hospital was unusually noisy that afternoon. Whispers ran along the corridors like nervous birds, flitting from ear to ear. Phones buzzed. Nurses hurried past with files clutched tightly, their eyes wide with excitement and worry. "Mama Grace, did you hear?" A cleaner whispered as he pushed his mop past her. "The CEO," he collapsed. "Right here. In this hospital." Mama Grace paused, her heart catching for a moment in her chest. "The CEO?" she asked softly. "Mr. Ethan Walters himself. The big boss. They say he collapsed in his office, breathing trouble, chest pains. They rushed him down to emergency." She blinked, slowly, feeling a strange coldness settle on her heart. Ethan Walters. That name stirred something quiet, something old. But the thought slipped away as hurried footsteps echoed around her. The young nurses were running now, fresh makeup, straightened uniforms, fixing their hair hurriedly as they rushed towards the emergency wing. "He's rich, you know. So rich. I heard he owns the whole hospital building. Imagine if he wakes and you're the first face he sees. Maybe you'll get promoted. Or a fat bonus. I want to be the one by his side. No way I'm letting that old woman steal this chance." Their eyes flicked towards Mama Grace as they passed, laughing under their breath. "Better stay away, Mama. This is serious work. You shouldn't stress yourself, old lady. This is for us young ones, eh?" She said nothing. She turned towards the emergency room, a strange feeling stirring in her chest, something tight and heavy. She didn't know why her heart suddenly ached. But it did. Deeply. When she reached the emergency doors, they were crowded with nurses and doctors, all gathered around the unconscious form of the CEO. Machines beeped nervously. The air smelled of medicine and panic. There he was. A pale face against white sheets. Still, unmoving. Oxygen tubes pressed against his nostrils. A team of nurses clustered around him, adjusting wires, checking monitors. His chest rose and fell shallowly, like a man struggling in sleep. Mama Grace moved gently towards the bed, her hand half raised. "Let me help," she whispered. "Let me see him." But a sharp voice cut through the air. "Mama Grace, please. We've got this. You can stand back. We don't want too many hands here." A young nurse turned and smiled with false sweetness. "We'll call you if we need extra blankets or tea, Mama. Just stay there, okay?" Soft laughter followed. Another nurse shook her head, muttering, "She thinks she can help the CEO? As if. This isn't the village clinic, old woman." Mama Grace's heart trembled. She wanted to speak, to explain. But what could she say? They wouldn't listen. So she stood back, in the doorway, alone. She folded her hands before her chest, her thin fingers curling tightly together. Her eyes, tired, old, but still burning with life, fixed on the pale face of the man on the bed. "Baby," she whispered under her breath. "Stay strong. Stay with us." A shiver ran through her. Something inside her knew him in a way the others could not understand. But she could not speak. Not now. Behind her, the nurses whispered and glanced her way. Why is she standing there like that? Is she pretending to care? She just wants attention. She should go home already. But Mama Grace did not move. She watched as they fussed over him, adjusting drips, pushing buttons, calling doctors. They didn't know how gently to touch him. They didn't know the soft words he needed. They didn't know the story his heart carried. But she knew. Oh, she knew. A doctor leaned close to check his pulse. Another scanned his chart. "His vitals are stabilizing," someone murmured. "We've done all we can. Now we wait for him to wake." Time crawled. The machines beeped their slow, endless rhythm. Nurses shifted, whispered, waiting for signs. And Mama Grace stood, still and silent, her heart whispering old prayers no one else could hear. Minutes passed. Or hours. She could not tell. Then, a movement. His eyelids fluttered. One of the young nurses gasped. "He's waking up. Quick, call Dr. Simons." The room froze. All eyes turned to the bed. Slowly, painfully, the CEO's eyes opened. Pale blue, unfocused at first. He blinked. Struggled. A doctor leaned close. "Mr. Walters? Can you hear me?" The CEO's gaze slid past him. Past the nurses. Past the machines. To the doorway. To her. His breath shuddered in his chest. His lips moved. "Mama." His voice was barely a whisper, but clear. "Mama, is that you?" The room fell dead silent. The nurses froze, exchanging stunned glances. Who's he talking to? Did he say Mama? His mother's dead, isn't she? The CEO raised a trembling hand, pointing, weakly, toward the door. "Bring Mama Grace." A gasp rippled through the room. Mama Grace felt her heart twist, tears burning her old eyes. Slowly, she stepped forward. Her hands trembled. Her breath caught. The nurses stepped aside, stunned and silent, their faces pale. She reached the bed, leaned down, touched his cheek with the soft, weathered palm that had wiped his tears long ago. "Baby," she whispered. "Oh, my baby, how are you doing?" The CEO smiled, weak but wide. His hand found hers, clinging like a child. "Mama, you're still here, you never left me." Soft sobbing rose in the room. The young nurses stared, their mouths open, faces red with shock. They did not understand. They had never known. But Mama Grace knew. She held his hand as he closed his eyes, resting. She stroked his hair, humming low in her throat, an old lullaby, forgotten by the world but not by him. And around them, the room stood still. For in that quiet moment, everything changed. Forever. The hospital cafeteria was filled with whispers the next morning. Every nurse, doctor, cleaner, even the administrators, moved with wide eyes and hurried voices. News had traveled like fire through dry grass. The CEO knew Mama Grace. The CEO called her Mama. No one understood. No one could explain. The young nurses who had laughed behind Mama Grace's back the day before now huddled in corners, glancing nervously at each other. Did you see how he grabbed her hand? Like a child seeing his mother? How could that be? She's just the old hospital nurse. Do you think she was his nanny or something? Maybe they knew each other long ago, but why didn't anyone tell us? Their words were soft and unsure now. The pride was gone from their voices. In the boardroom upstairs, the hospital management sat around the long table, silent, waiting. On the far side sat the man they never thought they'd see like this, Ethan Walters, CEO, owner of the hospital, the man whose face had been on the covers of business magazines, who moved in private jets and limousines, who had stood beside presidents and kings. But this morning, he was not wearing his expensive suit. No tie. No designer watch. Just a plain blue shirt. His face was pale from the night before, but his eyes were clear, sharp. Beside him, like a quiet shadow, stood Mama Grace. Her hands folded gently in front of her. Her old uniform neat. Her glasses perched gently on her nose. Calm. Silent. The room was hushed. Then the CEO spoke. I called this meeting because there is something you all need to know. Something you've ignored for too long. His voice was low but steady. This woman, Mama Grace, is not just a nurse here. She is my mother. A sharp gasp ran around the table. Heads turned, eyes widened. No one moved. I know what you're thinking. How? A white boy and a black woman? You think maybe she was my nanny or my maid. But you're wrong. He looked at them, steady, strong, proud. I was nothing when she found me. A street boy. A homeless, dirty little child scraping for food in the trash. My real parents abandoned me. No one cared. No one wanted me. But she did. She found me in an alley, half-starved, coughing, broken, and she took me home. His voice softened. His eyes misted. She fed me, bathed me, held me when I cried in the night. She gave me a name, a home, a future. Without her, I would have died there, or worse. A heavy silence filled the room. No one breathed. She raised not only me, many others too. Children she took from the streets, from hopelessness, from pain. Some are doctors now. Some are teachers. Some own their own businesses. We are her children. All of us. He turned and smiled down at Mama Grace. But she never wanted praise. Never wanted thanks. When I made my fortune, I begged her to leave this hospital, to come live with me, in my mansion, in comfort. I offered her everything. A house. Servants. A garden. Whatever she wanted. He paused. She refused. His voice trembled a little. She said, Ethan, relevance is not in sitting in comfort while the world suffers. Relevance is in doing what your hands can do. Helping the weak. Caring for the broken. That is life. That is joy. So she stayed. Here. In this hospital. Folding sheets. Comforting strangers. Holding the hands of the dying. And you laughed at her. No one dared to speak. Some lowered their heads in shame. Others stared at the table, faces burning. You looked down on her. You mocked her. Called her old. Useless. In the way. But this woman, saved my life. Saved hundreds of lives. She is the reason this hospital exists at all. Because without her, there would be no Ethan Walters. No CEO. No empire. He stood slowly, lifting Mama Grace's frail hand in his. Today, I make it official. From this moment forward, the East Wing, the children's ward, will be named the Grace Olumide Wing. A place of healing. Of hope. In honor of the woman who gave so many of us our first hope. A sound broke the silence. Soft. Wet. One of the young nurses was crying silently, tears sliding down her cheeks. Another covered her mouth, trembling with guilt. Mama Grace smiled gently at them. Not with anger. Not with pride. But with love. The CEO turned to the room again. And let this also be known, not because she is my mother. Not because she saved me. But because she has lived the life that truly matters. Not the life of titles or money or power, but the life of service. Of compassion. Of selflessness. And that is greater than any rank or name this world can offer. He looked at them all. Learn from her. You have so much to learn. Then he turned to Mama Grace. Come home with me, Mama. Come rest. But she shook her head gently, smiling with soft, kind eyes. My place is here, baby. With the sick. With the weak. This is my joy. My calling. Don't take it from me yet. His eyes filled with tears. Just promise me you'll visit, Mama. Please. She laughed quietly, the soft laugh of an old woman who knew secrets the world had forgotten. I will, baby. I will. And as they stood together, the mighty CEO and the quiet old nurse, the hospital watched in silence. Humbled, shaken, changed. For the first time, they truly saw her. And they would never forget her again. The sun was gentle the next morning, casting a soft glow over the hospital walls. The name Grace Olumide Wing shone fresh and bright on the newly polished brass plaque outside the children's ward. Patients, visitors, and hospital staff paused as they walked by, their fingers brushing the name, their eyes softening with quiet respect. Inside, life went on as always. Children laughed in their rooms, nurses hurried along the hallways, and doctors read charts with tired, determined eyes. But something had changed. Something silent and strong, like a breath long held finally released. Mama Grace moved quietly through the halls, her presence no longer overlooked. Heads turned now when she passed. Smiles bloomed on faces that had once held scorn. Young nurses who had once laughed behind her back now greeted her with quiet warmth. "Good morning, Mama Grace." "Let me help you with that, Mama Grace." They carried her trays, opened her doors, looked into her eyes and saw her, truly saw her. But Mama Grace never changed. She still folded sheets with gentle fingers, still sat by the bedsides of the lonely and afraid, still hummed old songs into the ears of the dying, still touched the faces of the sick with hands full of comfort and care. One afternoon, the young nurse who had laughed the loudest came to her side. Her eyes were wet, her voice trembling. "Mama Grace, I'm sorry. For the way I treated you. For everything. I didn't know." Mama Grace smiled gently and took her hand. "Child, the greatest lesson in life is not never to be wrong, but to learn and change. I forgive you. I forgave you long ago." The nurse began to cry, and Mama Grace held her, rocking gently, the way she used to rock lost children long ago. The CEO came often now, walking the hospital halls not as the great, untouchable man, but as a quiet son. He would sit beside her as she worked, helping her fold sheets, laughing softly when she scolded him for folding them the wrong way. "Still can't fold, can you, baby?" she would tease. "No, Mama. I leave the real work to the real hands." The hospital buzzed with rumors of other children, other lives she had touched. "Did you hear? She raised that famous doctor in Chicago. She took in that lawyer who defended the poor man last year, the one who won the case for the farmers. Her children are everywhere, changing the world. And here she is, still working, still serving." But Mama Grace cared little for such talk. Her joy was not in being praised or noticed. Her joy was in the quiet, secret moments, in the whisper of the sick child who smiled in her arms, in the soft breath of the old man who passed peacefully as she held his hand, in the grateful tears of a mother whose baby had survived the night. This was her kingdom, her glory, her life. One evening, as the sky turned gold outside the windows, Ethan came to her side once more. "Mama, you've given so much. Let me give you something now. Come. Rest. Let me build you a house. A garden. A place by the sea. You deserve it." She smiled at him, that slow, deep, knowing smile. "Baby, I have my house here. My garden is these halls. My sea is the endless faces of those who need me. This is my joy. My calling. I will rest when it is time. But not yet." He bent and kissed her forehead, tears shining in his eyes. "I love you, Mama. And I love you, my son." The hospital staff watched this simple, beautiful moment. And their hearts softened. Their pride fell away. They saw, truly saw, what they had missed all this time. Not power. Not wealth. Not titles. But a life well lived. A life poured out for others. A life that mattered. In the years that followed, the Grace Olumide Wing became the heart of the hospital. Children healed there. Families found hope there. And every patient who passed through its doors heard the story of the quiet old nurse who had mothered the CEO, and hundreds more, with nothing but her love, her faith, and her strong, gentle hands. And Mama Grace remained, walking the halls, folding the sheets, singing her quiet songs, until the day, far, far in the future, when she would finally lay down her work and rest. But not yet. Not yet. For there were still tears to dry. Still lives to comfort. Still children to hold. And joy, endless joy, in the work of her hand. True greatness is not measured by titles, wealth, or outward beauty, but by the quiet service we give to others. A life of humility, love, and compassion leaves a mark deeper than power or fame. People may laugh at kindness today, but in the end, it is kindness that will be remembered and honored forever. Never despise the quiet ones who serve in the shadows. They may be the very pillars holding the world together. If you enjoy this story, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious. Who knows what story we will uncover next?